All right. Mohammed, welcome to the podcast. Thank you for joining us. You are the founder and CEO of Crown Acquisitions Group, and you are a fractional CFO who helps a lot of startup founders all the way from your pre-seed round to Series A, Series B. I know you work with even companies and startups that are bootstrapping or trying to grow their business or they're trying to get a funding round. And many startups, especially founders who are starting off early, try to wear all the hats, right? They're being
Yep.
the finance guy, they're being the marketing guy, they're being the the printer, everything. But what's one of the biggest mistakes you've seen with early stage founders when they're wearing all these multiple hats right in the beginning? Like what have you encountered in some of the conversations you've had with people who are founders starting their own business and uh, kicking things off with while wearing multiple hats?
Yeah, great question to start with. First of all, thank you for having me, Sheldon. I appreciate the time being on your podcast and just having this conversation.
Yeah.
So, to answer your question, for me, like what I've seen is first, I'll give you a little bit of background about myself. I started on Wall Street as a financial analyst, then I rose the corporate ranks in a startup software company that was in fintech. And later on joined another startup in healthcare. And I've been working in the startup world, right? Like usually Series A company come in, we're growing fast. We just hit 10 million in ARR, and we're starting to need structure. We're starting to need reporting, and we start to kind of need to have metrics and KPIs and an understanding of what's happening in the company. And usually you touched on it, right? Early stage founders, I call them, have a difficult transition to move. They have the title CEO,
Mhm.
but at the beginning, the CEO title is more a chief everything officer than a chief executive officer, right? For lack of funding, money, resources, bootstrapping, you cannot go hire a full suite of C-level executive at the seed level or even a Series A. You need to validate your product, validate your story.
Mhm.
For investors to start backing you at Series B is when the pressure to start having an executive team comes. And the conclusion I drew is like, why not help those companies that are going through the seed, Series A, trying to get to Series B, give them guidance, give them kind of the support that they need, even on a fractional basis, because they can't afford it. And candidly, they don't need a C-level executive full time. They just need to make sure the direction is the right one. And then you have doers that are doing it for you. And usually, when you're seed or a small business, you can have the doers at a cost efficient full-time employee working for you, right? So the mistakes are really allowing yourself to spend times on tasks that like you could actually give to somebody else. And the problem is twofold. One is control. Founders have a love of control. They think that as long as they control the decision making, mistakes are not going to be made, or it's going to be made the way they want it to be done. And sometimes you just have to hire experts to do it because they have that subject matter expertise and experience doing the tasks that you do not have experience doing. You might have some knowledge, you might convince yourself that you know what you're doing, but the reality is, if I'm a finance guy today and I'm starting my own company and I'm doing marketing events or I'm doing marketing tasks, yeah, I could have my view on how it should be done. But every time I talk to a marketing consultant, yesterday was beautiful. We're going through a rebranding right now. And we're doing our new website that's going live by the end of the week or maybe next week. And we were finally doing the last few edits. And there were a few words I did not like. But he was like, no, these words are key for SEO optimization. Like we're using them so they serve a purpose.
Yeah.
I'm not pushing back anymore because the goal is different now. There is an intention about using that word. Like there is a goal. There is like a real need to use it that a subject matter is validating because he has 20 years of experience doing that. So as much as I want to say, no, I don't like it, I have to abide to, hey, if you're bringing people for their subject matter expertise, let them fail fast if they're wrong, but don't be the one who is going to handcuff them. And usually founders do that. Like they will bring in the consultants, they will bring in the people, but if they don't align with their vision, they will start becoming the ones who are handcuffing them. And my advice to founders is, if you make the decision to hire somebody, allow him or her to fail fast, but don't be the one putting like the process in place for them to fail by being slow to get back to them, not liking what they're pushing for, and you end up being the one who's actually resisting change. Because growth comes from change, and change usually gets you out of your comfort zone. And that's like the one problem that founders have. They are used to running the business their own way. They have scaled it to get to a certain point, so they validate that in some sense they are being successful, which I agree, right? You went from 0 to 1, or you went from 0 to 10 million in revenue, and you were doing everything. But the reality, you've never gone from 10 to 50, and going from 10 to 50 is completely different from 0 to 10, and going from 50 to 100 is completely different from going from 1 to 50. So that's why when you hire people, sometimes the job description clearly says like, hey, we're at $100 million, right? Like we need somebody with the experience of a company running at $100 million of revenue. Scale comes, like compliance comes, regulatory compliance comes. So you have to understand what is the player and what level does he play at. You're not going to bring a summer league basketball player to play in the NBA. And if you do, don't expect him to score 20 points and get you 10 rebounds, because that's not the environment he was playing in. So that's often the mistakes that founders bring. Like because of resource constraint, usually money, they want somebody who's going to be let's use the CFO example, right? They're hiring their first VP of finance or head of finance. They want him to be a CFO, but they also want him to be a bookkeeper. You know what I mean? And the job description is like, hey, you have a clear road to becoming the CFO. But then that person who worked for 3 to 5 years, like really building that whole infrastructure, doing capital raise 1, capital raise 2, by the time he does capital raise 3, they're telling him, hey, we're going to bring a CFO who has experience doing what we want him to do or growing the company. So that's just the state of how things are. Founders have to adapt to an always changing environment. As you grow, the demands on the business grow. The people that you have, the team that you have might be tapped out, meaning that you were at $10 million in revenue. You hired a team of managers and executives that were like capable for a company of that size, but they stayed with you for 3 years, and after 3 years you're at 50 million. Those people are now learning on the job. They've never done that. And founders sometimes either have a hard time like recognizing that and making the step where, hey, I need to fire and hire or bring somebody. Why? Because usually they started to give the C-level title or a high level and created an executive team too early, to then find themselves with truly needing to hire a true CTO or a true CFO when they moved somebody into that role and he wasn't quite ready for it. So, and sometimes it's the revolving door where CEOs keep on playing the blame game. Oh, it's not my fault, it's the sales guy's fault, it's the head of this fault. And you keep hiring new people expecting like, you know, that somebody's going to come and magically change your processes and make them work. So sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But in my view, when you start hiring too many people, outsiders, to solve your problems, you create new problems. So I'm a big believer that like, if you really want to grow, like build your teams from the bottom up, and promote and reward people who go above and beyond the call of duty, people who like do not stop at their job description, but actually take on more than what they are supposed to because they want to and they're invested. And usually those guys are the ones that are worth giving the promotions to, because they know deep inside out. But I agree that there is a level where learning on the job becomes kind of a detriment to the company. So clearly, once you reach a certain scale, you have to. And I recommend it to my clients, which is counterproductive, right? But certain clients of mine that get to 25, 30 million, I start pushing them, like even like above that number. I definitely tell them, guys, like you need the full-time CFO now. I know this arrangement works for you, but I'll help you hire your CFO, the right guy. Will keep the team under him. But now you need to, even to your next investors, you look more ready by having your C-level exec team in-house than trying to continue to bootstrap it or not show it the, how do you call it, the importance that it has. Like at the end of the day, when you start a startup, what's important is sales, go to market, product fit, marketing. Finance takes really a back burner. And usually it's for two reasons. You're expected to burn money at the beginning. So we're only really thinking about traction, customers, retention, and then we'll think about margin optimization. But you could also combine that like and run lean and start to put processes in place that will help you down the line, rather than what I've seen throughout 25 years of my career, people coming in down the line and trying to re-architect or rebuild everything from scratch because they tell you that the tech stack or the legacy stack that they are inheriting is not good enough, or we cannot build on top of it. And you end up not setting up the right foundations at inception or early on, and you end up spending a lot of money, usually bringing also consultants and third party to help you implement the latest and greatest tools that often break the what was working, and now you're always playing catch up. And I really saw that, and I'm really trying right now. I'm not trying to publicize my company, but I'm really trying to get founders at an early stage to understand that. And that's the value proposition behind my company. Is like even from a C-level executives, the more I started talking to people in my network, they liked my idea. They're like, hey, somewhere fractional C's anyway. So they're like, hey, if you have work, send it my way. But you might have a startup today that doesn't have anybody really dictating the technology roadmap, and they're scrapping it together, band-aid, putting it together. Yes, it works, but if they were to spend $10,000 on 2 months of consultancy from a real CTO that like comes, looks under the hood, say your tech stack should look this way, your data warehousing should look this way, move to AWS, you will be HIPAA compliant in AWS and not have to think about it. And people don't even know they have those options, right? Like you're in healthcare, you know you have to be HIPAA compliant, you know you have to work this crazy infrastructure, but all of a sudden somebody comes and tells you, hey, AWS can create a cloud hosted solution for you that is HIPAA compliant. You don't need to create it on your own. You need the SOC 2 like certification. You can work with experts that get your environment already SOC 2 certified. So those barriers to entry that used to exist in the past don't exist as much. And we really try to bring value for these startups. It's like, I can recognize your gaps. I'm in finance, but I can tell you, hey, you lack leadership in marketing. People are spending money without any controls, any KPIs. Why don't you bring somebody from marketing to establish the framework? It could be the technology side. It could be the sales side. You don't have a real sales leader who is putting quotas for your sales team, for your sales people. So plugging in those gaps at the beginning to make sure directions, goals are aligned with whatever the vision is. You have businesses that want to grow top line revenue and don't care about expenses. You have businesses that actually have grown and now want to kind of optimize their expenses so that they really understand their margins. And those are different profiles, right? You need to understand the need, the moment that they are in, and cater to that need, right? Like, so if I see a founder who's talking to me about like cost optimization and wanting to raise money and his valuation is not where it is, but I also see him spending money on Google ads and Facebook ads without clear keywords or negatives, or like, you know, like just spending to have like what they say, cast a wide net to create leads, that's not being strategic. It's like you have to look at the return on investment of that pay-per-click, right? Like campaign by campaign, and really see which one is returning a return on your investment and which one is actually pouring money out of the window. And sometimes they don't want the truth to get in the way of a good story. You know what I mean? And I always say, this is something I always say, I always post about, is like, I'm often painted as the bad guy. Why? Because I bring the truth to the table, and sometimes the truth gets in the way of the story. When you're raising, you embellish your story. You want to say things are better than what they are, right?
Mhm.
I'm not that type of guy. I'd rather tell a CEO I work with, yes, the 20 million in revenue that you have in your plan for next year is achievable, but the year after, you just did you just did 10 million. You're not going to double your business in 1 year. You might go to 15 next year and 20 the year after, which is still great growth. If you maintain your cost and you show profitability, you're still good. But some of them want to show that top line growth bigger than it is, and fund it before it's actually real.
So
And
how do you on that point, I just want to ask you, because that financial narratives that you create, right? Because the finance is something that investors really look at very, very, in a very, intense way. How do you create those financial narratives for if a founder is going to pitch it to an investor? Like how, like you talked about, like, some founders like embellish it or try to like inflate it. From your point of view, if someone has been bootstrapping their company or has grown their company and then now they are going towards a funding round, first question is, how do they know they should go for funding? Like, how would
mm,
they know from the finances?
mm,
Second, if they have now come to a place where you have helped them and showed them, yeah, actually, you could go for a funding round. How do you create that narrative so that it impresses investors or attracts the right kind of investors as well? Because you don't want to just attract anyone, but you
yeah.
want to attract the right kind of investors. So that's a two-part question. What do you think?
Look, the signals are there, right? Like when you
Mhm.
start a business, usually the first signal is your revenue and traction in revenue. And actually, it's funny you ask that question, because today we're really living a shift, and I'm talking a lot about it on LinkedIn lately in my content, a shift in how builders are building. So Lovable, for example, today announced that they raised $200 million at a 1.8 billion valuation. This is a company that wasn't in existence a year ago. And Lovable is democratizing coding. Like, hey, you have an idea, talk to me about your idea, I'll code it for you. And the CEO in his post today actually made the parallel with Canva, saying before Canva came out, there were like 5 million designers in the world. And after Canva, there's 220 million designers in the world, because Canva made designing very easy. Lovable is making coding very easy. So we all have ideas. We could all have a unicorn idea in our brain. The problem is, like, we did not know how to code. We did not know how to buy servers to host them. The barriers to entry were extremely difficult. So SaaS came in, software as a service, and started to democratize a little bit that word, right? Like, and the milestones to answer your questions were very simple. You hit $1 million in ARR, you start to prove that you have traction, right?
Mhm.
You hit 5 million, you start proving that like go to market fit is almost there. 10 million, the big boys start looking at you and want to invest in you and put money behind you. Like, and the VCs were structured that way. Like some VCs would tell you, once you reach 10 million in ARR, come reach out to me. You know what I mean? Some would tell you 5, some would tell you 50, some would tell you 100. So they created their, hey, I'll start looking at you once you reach the level that is interesting for me and the size of checks that I write, right? So for a founder, the first thing that you needed to kind of get first is validation that the market wants whatever product you created. Okay, you have paying customers. Like yesterday I was commenting on a Y Combinator CEO who was saying, hey, our product is great, like, but every client that we're signing is explicitly asking us to white label it, and they don't want to say that we're powering their product. And when does the inflection point stop? Like, I want to start saying this is my product, right? So that's a good problem to have. Like, you're selling your product, you're getting feedback from Fortune 500 companies, but right now your customer is telling you, I'd rather white label it. Don't push too much, because they're giving you feedback loop. But there's a moment where you have to say, okay, my cohort, year 1, year 2, or my first 3 year, I'm going to accept that. But now the sales team needs to start pushing that it's not white labeled anymore. And if I can't sell that, that means the market is telling me something and it has to be white labeled, and I'll continue that route. So again, to answer your question is, you have to adapt to what the market wants. And once you have something that the market wants, the signs are there for you to kind of be able to go to investors and say, hey, I put this product out there, here's the traction that I'm getting. And what they used to look at and really validate their thesis is, okay, how engaged is your client? So in SaaS, especially B2B, it was sticky. You would sign 3-year contract, 5-year contract, multi-year contract that made your monthly recurring revenue become an annual recurring revenue. That made it easy to kind of create a valuation based on that, because customers did not have an easy out of the contract without paying a penalty, without paying the remainder value of the contract. So SaaS kind of became this locked-in model, right? But today we're in this AI world where application can start to gain traction within days, and monthly recurring revenue can hit 6 figures within months, if not days. We've seen a Lovable app hit 3 million in revenue in 48 hours.
Wow.
So how do you start really assessing traction and churn when you start creating millions of dollars in revenue? Lovable itself is at 75 million ARR in 8 months.
Wow.
So there's a real shift right now, both from the investing community and from the building community, where the KPIs, the metrics that used to tell us, okay, you reach 1 million, you reach 5, you reach 10, you talk to these guys, you talk to these guys. Now it's a little bit messy because everybody wants to get in, everybody wants to be part of the latest and greatest. And anybody that says I'm doing AI is being looked at by people who were not even investing in tech in the past, because it's the flavor of the month, right? So it just seems to me that right now is really a time that is both good if you have a good idea, and bad because there are too many of them. You know what I mean? Like, and there's too much money going into too many ideas that lost traction and faded quickly, which what it created is that now everybody's pausing to be like, okay, they got early traction, but now how do we measure whether that early traction is sustainable or not sustainable? And how do we not get burned by putting money in too quickly and then realizing that the people that signed up were on a free trial, were on a discounted, because that's what it is now. We're not, you and I are not signing up on ChatGPT on a 3-year contract, right? We're signing on a monthly basis, $20 a month, and we could cancel it tomorrow.
Yes.
Right.
So how do the founders then build that kind of sustainability? Like, are there any conversations that are happening here? Because this AI rush is kind of like this gold rush of today's day, right? It's kind of like everyone's kind of moving into that, and anyone's got an AI name in there. Oh, AI SaaS, AI app, AI whatever. It's getting it's too much of noise out there, and there are some great gems in there, like the Lovable example that you talked about. How does a founder or how does an investor understand, or even like fractional, people who are like ourselves going and advising people on how to do this? How do they even start thinking about the sustainability of the product, right? Okay, you've got that initial traction. Great. You got all these initial signups. Maybe they were free customers, beta testers. Now you've got some paying customers, but you're right. It's on a monthly basis, right? And how do you keep that sustainability? How do you maintain that retention with your customers so that then you're growing it consistently, and then you're attracting maybe more customers while you're kind of bootstrapping, or you're attracting investors as well? Is there any insights that are conversations that are happening around that sustainability aspect?
That's the main, I think, in my opinion, right now, the main talking point of most of these companies, both inside the companies and the people investing in them, is, hey, how do we make sure that it doesn't become a fad, or it doesn't become something that is used for a few months and then people go out? So again, it's not intentional, right? But imagine you started a company, Sheldon, right? And all of a sudden, you making 20 million or 10 million in revenue overnight, like in a few months, right? It's going so fast that you don't even have the reporting capabilities yet to know the churn of your customer, the retention, the lifetime value. Like, how can Lovable claim to know the lifetime value of their customer if they've been only been for 8 months, right? So there is an element of having faith in the process, but also I posted about it yesterday. There's a clear divide today in the narrative. There's the mission-driven narrative in AI, and there's the so-called mercenary, right, in AI. Because you see Meta right now, Facebook signing and poaching AI engineers, 200 million contracts, 300 million contracts. Who would have thought, like a few years ago, that engineers would demand that kind of money to be like poached from OpenAI to come, like, to work at Meta? Yet Meta is not really talking about mission or anything. They're just going brute force, right? On the other hand, you have the ex-CTO of OpenAI who just raised $2 billion at a $12 billion valuation with no product, no roadmap, just a team that he assembled and a statement that says, we're gonna do AI and help researchers and do it open source. So again, missionary versus mercenaries, right? And there's that clear divide right now is investors look at companies where are you AI native or are you trying to be AI? All of a sudden, you used to be SaaS and you're incorporating AI. So for me, candidly right now, my initial view of the market is the people who are trying to reconvert themselves to become AI or to add AI are struggling because they have their legacy infrastructure, their legacy systems, legacy people who are now being asked to reinvent themselves. You know what I mean? And it doesn't happen overnight. Even if you hire a chief AI officer, you're not going to change the culture of the company overnight. And you have these truly AI native companies who are taking a leg up right now on the market because they are optimizing their own workflows. They truly understand how AI works, and they're not kind of scratching their head trying to pretend they do AI. So the first differentiator, in my opinion, is are you AI native or are you not AI native? And that's like step one to kind of understanding who you're dealing with, right? Like I posted also about Kodak. A guy playing with Lovable decided to share that he created a DocuSign uh, um, product tool for free and he put it on Reddit. Within a week, DocuSign sent him a cease and desist letter and sued him. And it just shows you like how big companies that are not AI native choose to react to a change in their environment. They're lowering up. You know what I mean? Rather than embracing that technology, I would have potentially offered that kid a job if I was DocuSign. You know, I'm like, hey man, like come, like maybe you can help us. I don't know, maybe it's too romantic, but that's how you should be approaching it rather than go the legal route. And I made the comparison between DocuSign and Kodak. Kodak was the dominant force in films, right? Like for 50 years. And then digital cameras came and Kodak was really slow to adapt. And it's the same thing. Kodak is no longer here today and digital cameras took over. So
That's the case with Blockbuster and Netflix as well, right? In fact, Netflix
exactly.
was part of like they were trying to get Blockbuster to acquire them. They even
Yep.
had the meetings,
Yep.
and then Blockbuster was like, "No, I don't think this is
No,
going
we're
to be
good. No,
we're
we're
good."
good. We don't believe in your mail delivery system, right?
Yes, exactly.
It takes visionaries to
Mhm.
see the future. So that's why right now, like maybe Facebook spending hundreds of millions on AI engineer, it's a vision that I'm not seeing, right? Like down the line, but it's just maybe also because Facebook has never been kind of the company that innovates, but like it's through acquisition. And even how Facebook came about, he got the idea from other people. So it's like Facebook, you really don't know what they're doing, right? But others, like you can see that there is a logic behind what they're trying to do. But I'll always pivot back to OpenAI. OpenAI was supposed to be a non-profit organization that like turned to a for-profit juggernaut the moment they saw that money was on the table. So the dynamic right now is like they said in the movie Wall Street, right? Like greed is good. Everybody's greedy right now. Everybody's trying to kind of put money
Yeah.
behind it and see what sticks. And it feels a little bit bubbly. Like, let's be honest, right? Like the valuation, the stock market is at an all-time high. It's reminiscent a little bit of the 2000s. Like
Yes.
when we had the internet bubble,
Com.
like every exactly the dot-com bubble, everything that had a dot-com behind it was valued like at crazy valuations, and now
Mhm.
everything that has .ai behind it or
Yeah.
.io, like everybody's like playing that game, right? So I really think we're going to see a leveling down sooner rather than later. But the same thing will happen that happened with the .com. Amazon was down 99% during that period and came out of it as being the number one e-commerce platform. So
Yeah.
some players will end up consolidating and getting out of it. I think we're too early right now to know who the big players are. Even if they're getting big checks right now and big funding, uh, it's still too early. I think even adoption of AI right now, I read an article yesterday that OpenAI is turning to become the most expensive consulting company in the world. So right now, OpenAI will send consultants to Fortune 500 company and build $10 million for customized projects
Yeah.
where they embed AI and ChatGPT into your workflows.
Hmm.
So yes, the tools are ready. The AI tools are ready. The world is not ready to use them yet. The world is not ready to implement them yet, to their full capability. And even the people who build them are still like kind of finishing V2, V3, V4. Like it's constant change right now. So it almost feel like if you're going to build right now, imagine like in the 2000 when you needed to build a website, you needed to have infrastructure, racks of
Exactly.
a data center, and today it's all in the cloud, right?
Yeah.
We're in that racks data center, and soon it's gonna be like, hey, you don't need all of this. So agentic AI, not agentic AI, like you have so many things right now and people confuse so much
Hmm.
that like I think the speed is just, things need like to calm down and people to take a breath to really understand what's happening in the ecosystem and who are the players to build around.
Yeah, and you're right about this. This is very like, similar to the dot-com era, right? Everything was feeling like very fast in that era. And looking back, that didn't was not as fast as what's happening right now. Because everything, as you said, everything, the infrastructures are in the cloud. So the what do you call it? There's no road, not as many roadblocks
Blocks,
to
that's
move
it.
ahead, right?
Yeah.
But in all of this, while you were talking about this, of going, companies are not built by one person. Companies are built by a group of people. That's why it's called a
Mhm.
company. You're literally in
Mhm.
the company of others, right?
Mhm.
That's where the word comes from. How does a founder, how does someone who's building this, an entrepreneur, even start thinking about the whole talent and the HR side of things? Because I know your company does tackle the financial strategy, but HR and compliance, and then the funding side of things as well. And I think I was looking you also like in workflow automations and stuff like that. But let's talk a little bit about the talent and recruitment side of things, because I want to bring this topic up because all around the news we see mass layoffs happening, right? There's thousands of people being let go by these big tech companies. People's livelihoods has become a little bit like, people used to like to get a job for the security of it, get the
Mhm.
paycheck, you get the benefits, and you get the retirement. But that's not the case anymore, and everyone is a bit helter skelter, because yes, this entrepreneurship's on the rise, right? But not everyone's an entrepreneur, not everyone's going to be a founder. There are people who
Mhm.
want to have a job. How is this world going to balance this? Because this is crazy a little bit. The person who wants to get a job is like not getting any security of finding a job. People are finding a job and then 3 months later being let go because of
Mhm.
balancing the books or whatever is going on. And then on the other end, the founder is going, okay, how do I find the right kind of people to join my company while I'm growing rapidly, or not, or bootstrapping, or whatever? What are the conversations happening around HR and talent right now in this kind of growing AI race that's going on here?
It's a good question. I mean, look, at the end of the day, recruiting is probably the number one priority of any founders. You're constantly
So
selling
glad you said
yourself.
that.
You're
Yes.
constantly selling your product, selling yourself. to people that you want to attract, to vendors that you want to work with, to partners. So recruiting is key, and it's becoming harder and harder for a variety of reasons. I will tell you that COVID did not help because it created that work from home, work-life balance, people wanting to work remotely, and founders that like had to adapt to kind of, hey, this new world that we live in. Like first we had to all work from home, but then kind of, hey, this is the new norm, right? And teams adapted, but I'm a big believer that you get a lot more done when you are in the same office under the same roof than remotely going back and forth in emails. That's number one. But to come back to your question and answer it specifically, I think we've seen actually the opposite. We've seen a lot of founders right now, what we call tiny teams and tiny companies, reach like big milestones without that infrastructure, without the need to hire people. You have companies that are less than 10 people today reaching like 7 figures in revenue, and a lot of them, right? Again, barriers to entry that are falling down, technology that is easily accessible, the cloud, AWS hosting, AI. So it's actually what, in my opinion, today, and why I think that like the fractional support might work, is like people are running leaner today. Like the seed companies, the pre-seed companies, even Series A companies today, you could find Series A that raised 20 million, and they are 10 to 15 employees, and they don't need and they don't want to grow. They don't want to hire more people. They automated their workflows. They're using AI agents, and they have it figured out. You know what I mean? Whereas the old generation used to think that like you grow in numbers, your org has to like your org needs to start looking like big and have people and layers. Like it's not the model anymore. To be honest with you, actually, I would look at the company today that has too many people and tell them find ways to automate some of the tasks, find ways to leverage AI. So yes, it's becoming harder for people who lose their job, especially I would say entry level, data entry, that you know your job can get replaced through automation or through an agent doing it. That's tough today. That's really tough. Even finance. I'm not gonna lie to you. I'm not naive about the fact that like today I run AI in my systems and for my clients where I get real-time data today, right? Like real-time feedback, real-time financial, consolidated P&L, balance sheet, statement of cash flow. Like the first of the month, I already have them. So the need to close your books by 7 days, 10 days, like all of like agents are doing it now. Like we are creating AI tools right now. We enter a lease schedule for a client, and the lease amortization schedule is coming out. The prepaid expense schedule is coming out. Any reconciliation that we want to do, we run it through AI tools, and the reconciliation is done. So it's a little bit scary in terms of these roles that used to be manual, or like you used to have a data entry person doing the data entry. You cannot do it today. Like I none of my clients today need a data entry person to enter their invoices into bill.com because it's all automated through OCR, and the invoice is read, captured, entered, whereas before I needed to have that bookkeeper to do that, right? So it's a little bit scary, but like the internet changed the world that we lived in the past, I think like we will adapt. New opportunities will come. AI is great, but AI still needs people to make sure that the output is correct, still needs people to maintain the systems, review certain things. So I think we are not clear yet as to what the job descriptions are that are coming out of
Mhm.
this new change, right? But for sure, like you would be naive not thinking that some jobs will become obsolete. And they already are, right? Like you have Amazon working with robots in their warehouses.
Yeah.
You have robo taxis that are coming out, so no more drivers. So that's the reality that we are in today. Like As much as like, look, when you walk in New York, there was like an image of New York that everybody knows. Like in the 90s, or even early 2000s, you would see a lot of payphones, right? Like they were in the corner of each street, like paying payphones. You put a quarter and you call. Now you work, and at every corner in New York, there is no more payphones. Why? Because cell phones replaced that. And there is no longer the need for it. It might have taken 15 years, like, or 20 years to completely eradicate it, but we knew when the cell phone came out in early 2000 that like nobody would keep using the paying phones, right? Because everybody had access to a phone. Now ChatGPT, everybody has access to it. The cost of compute is going to go down. So like this phone became kind of everybody has it, and at the beginning not everybody had it. Everybody's going to have access to this technology, and it's going to change the world we live in. So tiny teams are redefining the way you're supposed to kind of run a company, recruit for a company, but at scale, you're going to need to have some sort of an executive layer. Maybe the titles are going to change. Maybe you're going to need to have across every company a chief AI officer. Like it might become kind of embedded in any company that like you're going to have your technology officer and your AI officer. They might be the same at the beginning, but then you're going to separate it, right? Because running AI is complex. Like across multiple departments is complex. The bigger you are, it's not for nothing that OpenAI is charging 10 million for implementations to Fortune 500 companies now, right? So we are seeing it happen, but I still believe that like we haven't completely moved away, right, from the old way of doing things. There are still small businesses that do nothing related to AI. There are still businesses that like are profitable, running normally, need the normal org chart. So 20, 30, 40 years down the line, there will be a big shift. But right now, we're still in that world with, like you said, a lot of noise about AI and a new way of doing things. But look, when
Yeah.
you have fundraising needs, you know it, you're growing, you're profitable, you start some, or even if you're not profitable, you know that you're spending money somewhere that is fueling that growth right now, and you convince investors, like to answer your question, that your story sticks, holds through key metrics that like highlight that. Like I can say I'm good at playing basketball, but when you see me play on the court is when you're gonna judge me, right? So that's usually how it goes. It's like they come in and start seeing, hey, how is your sales cycle? Like how long does it take you to close deal? Can I speak with prospects or people that you recently signed to validate that like they're happy, they weren't sold something and then they realize that it's something different and now they feel like they're pissed off or like somebody cheated them, because a lot of that happened too. You have a lot of salespeople who will go out there and promise the moon to get a deal closed, and then a product team that is scratching their head about features that don't exist but have been sold because the CEO has been pushing for new sales and telling the salespeople, hey, we'll customize it, we'll build it, just sell. And that happens a lot.
Yeah, that is happening definitely a lot right now. And that's the noise that we're talking about, because in amongst the real products that are being built, which are actually going to serve and help people, there is a lot of noise where it's a lot of things are being sold without it actually even existing. And that's okay, because some companies can actually adapt and keep up with that, but some can't, right? And as you said, I mean, your insight about like 20, 30 years from now, like things will start to, consolidate. We'll have more clarity. It's kind of like 20, 30 years back when the whole dot-com thing. I mean, look back at websites at that time and what was happening in the dot-com era. It was nothing. It was not much. But now 20, 30 years later, with the innovations and inventions that have happened, even with the phone example, as you mentioned, right? So much has changed because the iteration loops that we've gone through along the way have actually refined it. And I think that's what people need to realize, that we're not going to have something just, available and ready. We're working on a futuristic kind of direction and a vision, right? But we can only achieve as much as we can, although it's happening at a very fast pace with the AI revolution here. It's only so much that can be pushed. The boundaries cannot be pushed too much, and in there there's a lot of disruption, and I think that is what's causing a little bit of this crisis in the workforce, because you said organizations would first measure how far they're growing by the how many people they had on the team, but now teams are becoming smaller, leaner,
Yeah,
like 6 people teams, 8 people teams, 12 people teams. There are very few that are going to that 30% high performance team, and 30 people teams are not big teams, right?
no,
Big companies had like hundreds and thousands of people and stuff like that. So this is very interesting, and I think both of us have had, and in our intro call we were talking about, like, we both were in kind of like in full-time roles in VP of this and that, and working for these big companies, and then we got laid off in different ways or were let go, and then started our fractional things and going into this different area. And the fractional role at a strategic level is becoming more and more important, because we have amazing people and entrepreneurs and leaders like yourself and myself out there who have the experience of strategically crafting growth plans, strategically looking at the financials, and then making plans on how we can go and deploy this. That is not something like that AI can fully do right now. It can assist us, right?
mm,
So the human being is still there, but you're right, the evolution of the roles is changing, because you have these small teams that are able to implement, but you still need like a small leadership team that you might not be able to hire all of them, CMO, CFO, CTO, all together.
definitely not.
You might only be able to hire the
Mm.
fractional level, right? So that's the change that's happening. So let's, as we're coming to the end of this podcast, like, I started wanting to wrap this up. I want to go back to a little bit of like some lessons that you've learned, because you have a lot of experience. And if you could whisper to a younger version of yourself, if they were existing in this time of the AI revolution, you've learned some lessons along the way, people skills, leadership skills, whatever. Are there any lessons that are coming up to your mind that if you had known, like if you were whispering it to your younger version of yourself, and let's imagine that younger version is somewhere out there today, right? You're giving back a little bit. What advice would you give to someone, whether they're a founder, entrepreneur, leader out there, trying to survive or thrive in this, fast-paced AI revolution world?
I'll tell you, it's an easy one because I fell into that trap myself. Don't let perfection be the enemy of good.
Mm,
We tend to always, in our way, we're like, who do you talk with the most? It's yourself in your head, and we tend to be the one pushing the brakes. And sometimes you have to just let your foot off the brake and just take action. And I was probably the one person who analyzed and overanalyzed every angle of every decision I made in my life. And sometimes you just have to jump to see if the water is cold or not cold, and even if it's cold, you jump and it becomes warm and like once you start moving in it. And I always use this analogy whenever I'm at the beach and I walk by the beach. The first time I put my feet, it's cold. I'm like, do I really want to go in? And then when I go in, after a few minutes, I forget about the cold, right? So take action, because action leads to a feedback loop. Whether the feedback is good or bad, it's a feedback that will lead you to act on it. You either double down on something that is good, or you actually pivot if it's not working, and you accept that feedback for what it is. And I think that founders just need to take action. And also, not just founders, people in general, don't do more than you can take on, because then that's a recipe for disaster, because you're always going to feel like you're a failure, like you're not able to complete what you set out to do. So give yourself like tasks that you can complete on a daily, weekly, monthly basis, not just tasks that are visionary tasks that take years to achieve, because you'll burn out and you'll end up always feeling that you haven't done enough or you haven't done what you set out to do. So the the thing that I will tell myself if I was starting now is like, take that leap of faith. There has never been a time where it's easier for you to start a business, to run with an idea, to look for co-founders and jump at trying to do something. The tools are there. The library of content that we have today through YouTube, internet,
mhm.
ChatGPT is
Yes.
like, you really, and I don't mean it in a bad way, but you really have to be lazy or uninterested to not want to better yourself and kind of learn what's going on. Like me, ever since I learned about Lovable, I'm every day hard on myself about you have so many ideas, just work on an app. And now all my nights are like playing on creating an app and just prompting. And even though my goal is not to monetize or create a company, I'm just pushing myself to learn what this new game is all about and be a player and understand, okay, these are the pieces that you put together. And who knows, maybe something comes out of it. But if you don't try and you're resistant or you think that it's not for you, you're going to be left behind. And I think this is the time where, look, I'll always remember my dad, may he rest in peace. Like when the cell phone came out, my dad was happy to answer a phone call and call, but missed calls, messages, he never wanted to understand how that worked.
Right.
Like, and I would tell him, Dad, learn to read the missed call. And he's like, if they called me, they'll call me back again. You know what I mean? And it was like really, how do you call it? Eye-opening to see my father not adapt to technology, but my grandmother, who was older than him, call me on video calls on Facebook Messenger and send
That's
me
amazing.
and creating a Facebook
Yeah.
profile for her and reconnecting with friends that she hasn't connected with since she was a kid and talking to me about my kindergarten friend added me on Facebook and she was in her 90s, right? So it's all down to the individual, whether you want to learn, whether you want to keep using what you're comfortable using or start using what you know is out there and you could benefit from. And I think that we live in an age today where you have zero excuses, really zero excuses for not being curious and not trying to put yourself out there and trying, especially to your point, if you're scared about your job going away, or if you
Mhm.
know that your job might be replaced because your only task or subject matter expertise is something that robots or an AI agent can start doing, like you should start learning how you can become a master at using that technology or leverage that technology to make you better at your job.
Absolutely. I mean, such good advice there. I mean, and that's the whole thing. It's like the human race keeps adapting, right? And
You
ability,
adapt or you die.
yeah, adapt or you die. And this is that pay. I guess it feels like it's a fast pace because yes, it is the fastest pace, but it's also the easiest time if you're able to take that leap of faith, as you said, and try. Because the answers, I think, a lot of people, and we this is not like a thing. Everyone does this because we're human, right? We like to know the answers before we go out there and try. That's kind of like these old school, education model. You
Mhm.
study and then you'd go and you give your answer. But that's not the world we live in today. It's all about the iterations, it's the tries, it's the errors, in the mistakes and the failures. And those are actually just stepping stones towards learning. Because as we learn, we uncover what else is out there and what else we can, adapt and go about. So very, very good advice.
You
As
see,
we wrap, yeah, go ahead.
you see product teams now, right? They take pride in shipping their product and their new feature faster and faster
Yes.
because they want that feedback loop from the end user. And because if they stay arguing in a room, or I want to add features, it's a never ending kind of uh, game that you're going to play of adding iterations of feature, making it better. So speed to bringing a product to market matters, and speed to listening to the feedback that your customers and the market is giving you. So put your product out there, put your next feature out there, like let them tell you whether they like it or no, because usually the ones who are building it get married to their idea. They love it, they don't see the flaws, right? So ship your product, ship your code, ship your feature, and let the end user tell you what they think of it. Don't be the one thinking that you have the latest and greatest when like you might not. So I think that product team have adapted to that and they have become more okay with the not more okay, it became a requirement to be fast. And it's changing the game right now because like we see it, like we feel like, hey, chat GPT 1 came and 2 and 3 and mini and this, but you see it like it's like constantly evolving and constantly creating new things is the way to go. So again, don't let perfection be the enemy of good.
Absolutely. I love that. Don't let perfection be the enemy of good. Yeah. keep striving, keep moving ahead, keep finding
Yeah.
ways to adapt.
Yeah.
As we wrap this up, Mohammed, any piece of of information about your business that you'd like to share with anyone, and any final words of wisdom to wrap this up?
Look, I started my business thinking that like early stage companies would really benefit from having like access to C-level executives that have been there, done that, raised equity, set up the right tech stack for companies, like created the right data automation, workflow automation, so that like founder, CEO could have real-time data. And I really believe in the value proposition. Everywhere I went, like you had single source of truth was an issue, data disparity, data integrity issues, and it created chaos. And being able to run the business when you have ops and finance having different numbers, when you have the CEO picking the number that he likes because it comforts him. So I was like, hey, if you want, again, I'll get back to what I told you earlier. If you want the truth to get in the way of the story, I'm your guy. If you don't want the truth to get in the way of the story, then I'm not your guy. It's as simple as that. And I'm confident in my ability to deliver for our clients that are want to take charge of their finance, optimize, the way they run their operations, and really get a grip on understanding their valuation, where they are at, and what they can do to improve their business.
That's amazing. Thank you so much, Mohammed. This was such a insightful conversation. Love your energy. Love the insights and the wisdom that you have over there. But it's also you're the one out there, helping, trying, testing. The analogy of touching your feet, your toes in the water. It's like 2 minutes later, you're like, this is refreshing. This is great. I think that's what we need to do is like leap into faith, not into fear.
Yeah.
Find people in your network, other human beings who are also sharing in that energy, which is how we found each other. And we're trying to serve and help people. At the end of the day, everything that's going on, we're here to serve and help and build community and help each other thrive. I mean, yes, there are lots of sharks and all of that out there, but let's assume that the water is cold, but it's refreshing, and let's assume that human beings are good at their core, right? And we're here to love and serve and take care of each other as well. So thank you so much, Mohammed. This was
Thank you for
really
having
good.
me, Sheldon. It was great conversation, and I'm looking forward to maybe having another one.
Absolutely. All right. Thank you, guys. Cheers. Bye.
Bye.